10 of the greatest black lightweights of all times, in my opinion, must include Robert Bobby Dobbs. I'm Scrapbook Boxing. Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff Series. I'm going to talk about Bobby Dobbs. I believe he's under the radar. He was a colored lightweight champion, and he needs to be recognized right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff Series. Now, Bobby Dobbs was born December 27, 1858 in Knoxville, Tennessee. He died December 25, 1930 in Charleston, South Carolina. He stood 5 foot 8.5 inches, weighed 125 to 136 pounds, and he was managed by Jack Skelly. He had 223 total bouts, 121 wins, 81 knockouts, and 47 losses. He was stopped 15 times, according to record. He fought from January 1st, 1884 to February 4th, 1914. May 1st, 1889, Bobby Dobbs would draw with Billy Hamilton after 2 hours and 45 seconds in a heated match. August 5th, 1890, he would take on John Moore and Billy Kilmore. Billy Kilmore was the same fighter. He went by two different names. So Bobby Dobbs would have two different records with the same fighter. September 25th, 1890, welterweight champion of the Pacific Coast and Utah's colored lightweight champion. Bobby Dobbs would make his way around the circuits. November 6, 1890, police would interrupt the bout that was scheduled at the Union Opera House of Aldens. It was between colored lightweight champion Bobby Dobbs and William Hardwood. It would be Hardwood's professional debut. The bout was fought in the Hot Springs. The referee, George McKinney, would allow Dobbs to be thrown to the canvas, body slammed. And in the 7th round, he was kicked in the mouth. And the referee said nothing. Bobby Dobbs came at a time when he wasn't considered to have value as a white fighter. He would take on Dave Campbell. Dave Campbell was born March 10, 1865 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He fought out of Portland, Oregon. It would be stated that he was also from Youngstown, Ohio. He died June 26, 1911 in Portland, Oregon, and he was killed while fighting in a wildfire. He stood 5 foot 10 inches and weighed 160 to 170 pounds. Now, he fought as a light heavyweight, but he was also a heavyweight champion of Oregon during late 1880s. And he fought fighters such as Billy Hill and Peter Lawler, Jim Corbett, and Bill Dunn. But Dave Campbell would be a fighter on the resume of Bobby Dobbs. Bobby Dobbs would face and defeat Dick Case 3 times. Now, Case was born 1873 in Seattle, Washington. He faced Utah's Bobby Thompson, April 28, 1896, and he would knock him out after 45 rounds. There was a sheriff by the name of Bat Masterson, and he recognized Bobby Dobbs. 1890s, when he would move over to Denver, Colorado himself. The Bob Masterson was a sheriff of Dodge City, and he would regulate the rules and laws of that city. And Bobby Dobbs would relocate to Alden, Utah, wanted to play baseball for the Alden minor leagues. August 5th, 1890, Bobby Dobbs KO'd John Moore. Was traveling between Colorado and Utah. Dobbs would face the Montana Kid, Dan Egan, 1892. Dobbs was KO'd himself. He would knock out fighters such as California Jack O'Brien, who at one point in time knocked him out in the same San Francisco, California. He fought him April 7th, 1892, and he would stop him in 3 rounds. May 13th, 1892, he would fight Danny Needham. Fought him in San Francisco, California. And they reversed it, made it an exhibition. He would take on Frank Childs, November 1892 in San Francisco, California. He would stop him in 3 rounds. Let me tell you about Frank Childs. Now, Frank Childs is known as the Crafty Texan. He was born July 17th, 1867. And he stood 5'9.5" weighed 160 to 185 pounds. He was managed by Herman C. Rauchowitz. And Childs was a short but durable young man. He was a middleweight. He would take on fighters such as Bob Armstrong and Joe Butler, Billy Smith and George Byers, Australian Billy Smith, George LeBlancy, Joe Walcott, who was known as the Barbadian Demon. Frank Childs was a very, very good middleweight. He wound up becoming a colored middleweight champion of the world, and then he would also become the colored heavyweight champion of the world. He would take on Walter Engleton, who was known as the Kentucky Rosebud. Now, he would lose to Bobby Dobbs November of 1892, San Francisco, California. He would lose to him in 3 rounds, and that was very impressive on the resume of Bobby Dobbs. 1893, January 19th to be exact, he would face Peter Jackson in an exhibition bout, Los Angeles, California. He would take on Australian Billy Smith, February 15th of 1893 in San Francisco, California. He would stop him in 12 rounds. But when he fought Hank Griffin, April of 1893, Los Angeles, California, it would be a 20-round draw. And Hank Griffin, who was another very durable fighter, was born in 1870. He died May 2nd, 1911, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He stood 6'1", weighed 180 to 215 pounds. And he was one of those fighters. Some would tell you he had 192 bouts. Some would say he had 219 bouts. Some would say he had 225 bouts. But he won about 103 bouts. And he was always available for any fighter that needed an opponent. Fighters such as the Black Pearl Harris Martin, Frank Childs, Jim Jeffries, Bob Jones, Dan Long, Jack Johnson in Denver, Ed Martin, Bob Fitzsimmons. He was always available. But most of the times it would be as an opponent. He would take on Joe Chewinski, November 15th of 1894. He would lose to him in 3 rounds. Fought him in Chicago, Illinois. But Joe Chewinski, don't let nobody kid you, was a solid fighter. His name was Joseph Barlett Chewinski. He was born November 8th, 1868 in San Francisco, California, and he died January 24th, 1943 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Stood over 5'10" and weighed 162 to about 180 pounds. And he was in the ring with fighters such as the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. He was in the ring with Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries. He was in the ring with gentleman Jim Corbett. He faced Bob Fitzsimmons for many exhibitions. And February 10th of 1891, he found himself in the ring with a fighter named of Joe Goddard. It would be for the Australian Heavyweight Championship title They fought in Sydney, Australia, but he would lose in 4 rounds to Joe Goddard. He would have an exhibition with John O'Sullivan, take on C.A.C. Smith, November 21st, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He would stop him in 4 rounds. George Godfrey, October 31st, Coney Island. He would stop him in 15 rounds. He'd be in the ring with Jack Fallon. That was some match, as far as I understand. Jim Hall. So, the thing about Joe Chewinski, he was a solid fighter. Chewinski would perform many of Uncle Tom Cabin performances with the Black Prince Peter Jackson, and many of those competitions were real right there on the stage. Things would get heated between those two men. But Jack Johnson would be stopped in 3 rounds by Joe Chewinski. But he'd be stopped himself by the world welterweight champion, the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. Bobby Dobbs would take on Bob Armstrong March 4th, 1899 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he would stop him in 6 rounds. Joe Butler, January 21st, 1899 in Chicago, Illinois. And he would win on a foul in 2 rounds. He would also take on Mexican Pete Everett and Joe Kennedy. October 28th, 1899, he faced Klondike John Haynes in Chicago, Illinois. And he would stop him in 3 rounds. George Byers, March 16th, 1900. Bobby Dobbs was probably, in my opinion, underrated. I'm trying to find the right words. Underrated, but at the same time, I think he was overlooked when you break down his career, all the accomplishments that he's made, the Stockton Cyclone. I mean, he was in there with so many good fighters during his time. But the bouts he had with Joe Gans was challenging him for his colored lightweight championship title. He lost twice with Joe Gans, but he defeated Joe Gans, and he also had a 20-round draw with Joe Gans. And it was for his colored lightweight championship title. This was before Joe Gans would become the first black lightweight champion of all times. I really need to say world champion because Bobby Dobbs was a colored lightweight champion. So Bobby Dobbs, in my opinion, must be added to the list of the greatest black lightweights of all times, 10 of the greatest, in my opinion. So thanks for listening. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Just imagine a lightweight would take on Jack Johnson, June 3rd, 1904. And he would lose in 6 rounds. Fight took place in Chicago, Illinois. Jack Johnson would become the first black heavyweight champion of all times. He was a colored heavyweight champion when he defeated Denver Ed Martin. And he was the first black heavyweight champion when he defeated Noah Brusso, Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia, stopping him in 14 rounds. Thanks for listening. Peace.